We had a lot of phone calls saying, what's going on? There was a little bit of panic, right?
Yeah.
Anyone can be affected by this.
It's not always people, it's not always the tech, it can be the process.
Having an incident response plan and then testing that it works. And when you do that testing, it becomes very clear, very obvious. Single point of failure. Hello, welcome to the Safer Digital Society podcast. This week we're going to be talking about something that will wreck your network faster than any attacker. It is, of course, a single point of failure. I'm here with our ethical hacking expert, Stu, who this week has been mostly testing biros.
And I'm here with Scotty, Chief Architect. The only thing he lets through his firewalls is his reputation.
Please help, this is a message from 2030. We're in the middle of a major incident and we've identified the biggest single point of failure within our network. And it turns out it's Steve. Steve holds the only admin password for a web server that's been affected, and the forensics team are waiting to get hold of the logs from that device, and there's no way back in until Steve returns from holiday.
Oh dear, okay.
Single point of failure. So what we're going to do is go through what is a single point of failure, people, technology, process, and then we'll come up with some of our solutions of how to avoid them as well. What is the defense in depth strategies you can put in place to get rid of single point of failures? Single point of failures in technology is a little bit different though, right? You don't have as much control over that as you do as the people and processes. Can you think of any examples of where single point of failure on technology is affected?
The CrowdStrike incident a few years ago went offline, turned loads of systems off, airports, airlines, financial systems.
Billions of pounds.
A lot of damage, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't just for the technology vendor, it was for the companies associated with them, right?
And the people who, we had a lot of phone calls saying, what's going on? There was a little bit of panic, right? We had clients not knowing whether they've been hacked. Is anyone else being hacked? As that, we sit now, a bit of hindsight, we can do a post-mortem and realise what happened. But at the time, I remember getting calls from pretty much every client going, some part of the network is down, are we being attacked? And it's sort of, as you get more of those calls in, you start getting that picture of what's happened. So
yeah, we saw a lot of people react like they reacted to the WannaCry incident from a long time ago. Very similar reaction.
What other ones? Because it's not just CrowdStrike, right? Anyone can be affected by this. So I think of stuff like the Hafnium for Microsoft, where it affected Exchange servers and led to a big old cloud migration into Office 365. It just goes to show that anyone can be affected by this. It's not a case of pointing fingers at a time and going, oh, that was bad. It's going, you know what, this happens.
It's not just third parties either. It can be an internal tech. A mail server internally goes down that you can't access. Well, you can't send emails. You can't do your daily business, So having that resilience internally of a backup server, a different Exchange server or something like that, where you are able to continue doing business, that again reduces the single point of failure.
And we see these time after time on cases, where the aim is to identify, contain, eradicate, recover as quickly as possible. And as you're trying to collect evidence items or take isolation actions, you come across a single point of failure and it stops. You have to pause and solve that problem before you can then move on with the rest of the investigation. And it just delays, right?
So one of my prime examples from my side of the house is password reuse. Yeah. We see it all of the time. An admin as old as day with a big grey beard will sit there with the same password for every server on the network. And that guy leaves, no one knows what the password is, or that password is reused and we can reuse it while we're doing our kind of penetration testing.
Company name 123 exclamation mark.
Winter 123 exclamation mark. Yeah.
Every time. Yeah, and I see it a lot when it's in the people from a crisis management point of view, when these incidents happen, that there becomes a single point of failure, a blocker. I've had it where we've had calls, late on night on a Friday, and we're on with the crisis team, and they say, oh, yeah, that IT admin has that access. We go, well, we need to get access. Can we ring them? When it's after 5 o'clock, call them up, and they sort of go, yeah, thank you very much, no. um, I'm off out, or they can't get hold of them, or the person is away, and you have to find a workaround. Usually isolate it until they get back and then carry on. But yeah, you see it quite a lot within the incident response, single points of failure within the people.
For sure. And that comes back to the process, doesn't it, of what is their instance response plan? Is it being followed through? Have they identified anything? And the process, as we've already said, it's not always people, it's not always the tech, it can be the process. It is a single point of failure as well.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the ways to go around getting rid of that process, single point of failure, is testing. People don't test enough. They don't go, right, we've got this process, let's test it. Can someone actually log in? Can someone else log in? You know, often you put a name down, you say who's the, you know, the chief information officer, the CISO, or who's the security manager for that week.
Yep.
Okay, they should have access to XYZ. Do they? Can they? Can they log in? Testing isn't always a, you know, exciting pen test, sort of red lights going, right, we're practicing an incident. Testing is sometimes just, can you actually log into the systems you need to log into? Can you isolate them if you need to isolate them? And can you access the data that will need to be accessed to be able to do the analysis?
A resilience plan.
The resilience plan, yeah.
So Scotty, I want to just ask you then, what is your top tip around the process of single point of failures to avoid them in the future?
So from a cybersecurity perspective, and particularly from incident handling and crisis management tabletops, testing,
Okay. Yep.
having an incident response plan, and then testing that it works. And when you're testing that plan, it's important to have everyone in the room from all the different business functions to test that plan, so that everyone understands, one, what they're doing in a crisis. We often make battle cards up and it literally says, you are the CIO, your role right now is to do XYZ, because you want to go to that level so that you're not getting into a room and going, what am I doing? You're walking in and going, I know what my roles and responsibilities are, and I know what everyone else's is. And when you do that testing, it becomes very clear, very obvious. Actually, I've asked a question, because we'll base it on live attacks and we'll throw in a curveball and say, oh, actually, here's what's happened.
Sure.
And it's very quickly gets highlighted when a single point of failure is put there, because no one has the answer. But then what you can do is go away and work on it and go, why don't we have the answer? Make sure it's removed, put some redundancy in there, change the plan, test again.
Test again. Yeah, excellent. And what about in this scenario, the IT guy was a single point of failure because he had access to everything? That would be highlighted in those tabletops.
Yeah, when we come along, and also within, you know, what we call, you know, blue teaming, red teaming, purple teaming, having those sort of exercises where you actually have to go and get evidence items.
Sure.
Also highlights single points of failure. We call it the IR readiness program. We do something that's very similar to that, where we actually just go and test collection. We go and say, right, here's our tools. Can we run it on X server? You give us a list of some non-critical, usually non-operational servers, and we'll go try and test collection on them. And then we highlight single points of failure through that.
And that's why we do purple teams, right? So we can test specific things within their policies, procedures and plans to say, hey, this has failed and this is the reason why it's failed. What would you do next? How are you going to do it next? But there's always a remediation step there as well to help get around it and fix those issues as well.
So that's process. And then there's technology and people. No, I'll do people last because it's the hardest. But technology-wise, in my mind, that comes down to sort of architectural review, actually having a look at how a system and network is built, constantly reviewing it to see, have we, as we both know, networks are built over time, things get added on, and you need to periodically review what you've got to say, actually, we're starting to get a single point of failure here because this system is now the link between these two cloud networks that we've created.
Exactly right. And one example I've got of this is in the banking sector, they're still using AS500, which is archaic at best. You know, some companies are moving on from it, but a lot still utilise it. When that stops working, or they don't have the people to program it anymore or maintain it, that single point of failure starts becoming a bit more reality. And the tabletop exercises that you spoke about that can happen and do happen, even on the tech stacks, you know, can help mitigate those issues.
Nice. People. Now, people is a really hard one, because as much as you'd like to think that you can just go and tell people what to do and say, this is it, we both know it's a very grey area that needs to have a deft and tact. Now, I know it's said all the time, but it's almost a culture thing. We got to all want to get rid of security risks, and you've got to sort of feel that you're not having something taken away from you. You're not having your admin privileges taken away from you, actually what you're doing is contributing to the security of a company, and not having something removed, I think is a real hard line to walk.
It's an understanding that you shouldn't be the only person with all of the admin passwords. Understanding if you leave, retire, get ill, that the business still needs to function. But that comes back to having defined policies in place that are tested with human in mind, of if Steve does leave, things are still going to work. Steve is on holiday, we can still get access.
Well, if Steve leaves, actually a lot of problems might go, but
life would be easier.
Yeah. So we're coming to the end now. What have we learned today? Single point of failures. They do exist. They exist in people, processes and technology. We've learned how to identify them, and we've learned how to remediate. But if you could take one thing away from this today, what would it be, Stu?
It would be that they be prepared, or prepare, so customers don't come with an investigation or a cyber incident.
Save them a lot of headache later on.
It really would. So we don't have the effect of it's too late. We're not getting to that point.
Awesome. Preparation. So remember, single point of failures aren't just technical. Sometimes they're human. Sometimes they're Steve. See you next time.